This is Visions Under Construction, a chance for our guests to share their visions and tell us what they're working on. For their continued support, we would like to thank Simwood, straight-talking, forward-thinking telecoms. Simwood.com. Why not make Cloudonics your communication partner? Go to cloudonics.io. You can find everything about the VUC at vuc.me, thanks to Bluehost, and thanks also to zipdx.com, the conference bridge, and to voxphone.com for local rate dial-ins. All right, so far I did not forget to turn the audio on, so that's already a big plus. And I want to mention to you once again that May 14th to 16th, 2018 in Berlin, Camellia World. Several of us are going to be there. We're still trying to torture Corrado into thinking about making some space to go there. Michael is not too close, but we have one of our guests, secret guests that I'm not going to mention yet, are also thinking about going to Camellia World in Berlin. I now need to comment while I'm switching my camera over so that it does not have any lag, and he did it. Okay, here we go. A little commercial for EFF while we're at it. EFF.org. Go donate a few bucks and you'll get this FBI style cap, and it'll cost you less because you're not in Europe. Anyway, we have quite often had the folks from 2600 Hertz on, generally Darren, which is why we told him to go away and get ready to travel or whatever he's doing, because we got Patrick Sullivan for the first time. Patrick, COO of 2600. Hello and welcome.
Hey, thanks for having us, guys.
I don't think you've been here before, and we have another guest who has not been here before, I'm sure, because I would remember her, and that is Miriam Libonati, who's head of product. Miriam, thank you.
Thank you. Actually, head of marketing, but yes.
I'm sorry. Wow. I'm going to have a course. My wife is in marketing, and she teaches it, and she corrects me constantly on the use of that term. We'll talk about that later.
Awesome.
Folks, you are both first-timers here, I think. Patrick, have you been on before? I don't think you have, but maybe.
Honestly, I was thinking about this. I don't know if I have. I feel like I watch Darren do it every time, and then he starts talking deep into the telecom stacks, and then I kind of zone out. But yeah, you know, we've been trying to support you guys for a long time, and you guys support us. So, you know, always wanted to be on here. So thanks for having us.
Okay, it's excellent. And the other thing is that for people who have not been on before, it's nice for us to hear from both of you on what the path is that brought you to 2600.
Absolutely. Do you want to jump into that now, or?
Yeah, we would usually start with that, and you can start from your earliest days as a toddler, both of you, or just cut to the after college or whatever. You start and end wherever you like.
Yeah. So, wow, it's a good question. So it really started, I went to school in computer science, and what I learned in school was that I'm not a good computer scientist. And so I went more into the business side of the world. And many years ago, around probably 9 or 10 years ago, I was at a bar with some friends, and pretty much everything good and bad in my life started at a bar. And there, Darren was standing next to me, and he pulled me aside. He's like, "Hey, I heard you're pretty good at business." And I was like, "Well, those are lies. But why?" He's like, "Because I'm thinking about starting a communication company." I was like, "Wow, that sounds interesting. But maybe instead of communication, why don't we do something like really exciting? Like, you know, I heard this Facebook thing's kind of a trendy thing." And he looked at me and he's like, "Hey, Patrick, to be clear, telecom is the future, and it's exciting." I'm like, "Well, telecom's been around for many years, but I'm totally down to, you know, quit my job right now and let's go move into your basement and start working on revolutionizing telecom." So the next morning, I wake up and Darren calls me. He's like, "I'm super excited that we're starting this company." I was like, "Oh, I thought you were kidding." So that was kind of how we started. So when we met, he kind of showed me his vision, described, "Hey, you know, no one's really building a full-on distributed stack. And you have the open source side, and then you have like the paid source. And the companies like BroadSoft and Metaswitch are kind of, you know, doing really well on the very expensive closed, you know, distributed stack. But on the open source world, you have Asterisk and FreeSwitch, and they're great because they have an open core. and you can build anything on top of it. But the problem with Asterisk and FreeSwitch is they're mainly designed around a single server. And if you want to scale it, you have to add additional servers, you have to add, additional components in front of it. But they're not really designed for, millions of calls or a million of sessions. And so at the time, I had no idea what that meant, but it sounded like he did. So I was like, Darren, I'm gonna follow your lead, and let's go forward with this. So that's kind of the genesis of 2600 hertz.
And when did Miriam? When did you take? I'm trying to get my cursor over here. Sorry. When did you get involved in this fantastic enterprise?
I joined about 1.5 years ago, actually, and this has been my first 1.5 years in telecom. I came from tech, but came more from the world of Oracle, so a different understanding of how things came together. And what funny enough, Patrick and I have known each other for over a decade, I think.
That's true.
And it was a casual conversation at a friend's barbecue. I was missing the world of marketing, but wanted to try something kind of outside my comfort zone. And he said, hey, we've spent all this time on R&D. We have this incredible product. We need someone that's good at marketing. We need this. I'm like, I can do that. We need this. I can do that. And the adventure began, really.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and what Miriam's not telling you is that she has a very long history of marketing, from Oracle to LinkedIn to Facebook. So she's done marketing for all the big guys. And I guess someone told me a long time ago is, if you're going to do something, pretend you're as big as the big guy. So I was like, well, let's get one of the head marketing people from, the quote unquote big guys, bring them in and see what they can do. And Miriam's absolutely killed it over the last couple of years.
That's fantastic. Quick question. How you say big, you're talking about big guys, and we know that Oracle, heaven knows how many employees they have. What is the approximate size of 2600 hertz? I would say worldwide, because you probably have people who are not working on premises. So
absolutely. So we are a distributed company. What we've learned is, especially with engineers, is when you find a really good telco engineer, you don't care where they live. And because of a lot of the technology we've been working on around like video conferencing, it's been much easier now. It's just to have all our engineers sit on a video bridge all day and just kind of ask questions to each other when they need to. So we have about 45 people at this time, and those are 45 full-time employees around the world. We also have a handful of kind of contractors that kind of jump in when we need extra work. But for the most part, for 45 people full-time.
Okay, and you're the op guy, Patrick. So this is this falls into our visions category. I would really love to hear. We want to go over the products, and we're going to talk about KazooCon, which is coming up as well. But we can maybe talk about the products and the, because Kazoo is just one part of the story, right? And your visions, both of you, at the same time. And when I say vision, I'm really talking about when you're, assuming you're not on vacation, when you get up, there's a point where you're going to start thinking about your professional workday. And I'm always curious about how that goes for people. And nobody's been on here to say, oh, I dread it. As soon as I start thinking, it's, oh my God, obviously. Yeah. But at the same time, it would be interesting to see how individuals approach this, because you do have a vision, I assume. And I'm going to shock Miriam by asking her right away what hers is. Your marketing. So what is your marketing vision, and how does it all work with the different products? You are presumably on all, there's at least 4 different product areas. Tell us a little about that and how you yourself deal with it. Would you please?
It's a great story. So I will say, coming into this, there was very minimal kind of marketing structure. So first it was diving in to understand. And we have a very diverse platform. You have this open core technology that you can use almost like a Twilio, or you can use it like a BroadSoft, or you can use just an SFBC portion of it. So I think what I would like to do is I hear all these people that hear about us, but they only hear a segment or a portion or just a piece of it. And I think it's really trying to dive in and understand the story well enough to put it out there to really show the world that we're a lot bigger than people realize. It's funny because we were just at actually Enterprise Connect, and there was a gentleman saying, oh, I think I've heard about you. And he started naming some of our customers. And I was like, yeah, those are all people we work with. And he goes, I didn't realize you were so big. And then we got into a conversation more on the developer side, and we realized, he's like, everybody's using you, but we don't realize that. So I think it's where the the best kept secret is one thing that Patrick says all the time. I think it's more.
To be clear, that's the one thing that our customers say. You guys are the best kept secret,
Yeah.
and that's what's pained me for so many years. And that's why we brought Miriam in. I was like, look, I don't want to hear this anymore. So we're actually hearing it less and less. And thanks to Miriam and all of her work and her team.
I don't want to be a secret anymore. I really want to highlight full functionality of what we can do. And I know people are looking for different things. Obviously, everyone's got a different audience and a different need. But it's making sure people really understand the breadth of what this company can really accomplish, and that we're continually evolving. And I mean, and honestly, I do only have a year and a half in this industry, but what I've seen out there, what I've kind of learned and listened to is we do have something that no one else has, and it's unique. And it's how do we tell the story in such a way that people are excited about it and really want to get involved with it.
Absolutely. And I'd like to add one thing to that is that before Miriam showed up, our vision was we are a platform that does everything. And if you're a customer and you go to a company that says we're a platform that does everything, they're like, I have no idea what that is. So what does everything mean? And we'd be like, well, it's whatever you want. And that was like, our thought process was like, hey, if we can do anything that they want, let's just tell them. It still confused them. It confused everybody. And so since Miriam got here, we kind of really looked at the product and said, hey, what if we actually split this up into multiple pieces and say, hey, here's a group of apps, and this was exactly what an SBC can do. Here's a group of apps, and this is what your Class 5 switch can do. Or here's a group of apps, and this is what your CPaaS can do. And so now people traditionally who've been in telecom forever can now actually understand what we're doing by looking at different product lines versus hearing we do everything. Because again, it's confusing. And, in retrospect, it was extremely confusing. We just didn't realize it until, Miriam and her team came here and said, hey, look, it's great for internally, but externally marketing, you have to tell customers exactly what they understand. And if they don't understand it, they're going to walk away and find something else. So it's helped us tremendously kind of explain what we do.
Interesting. And so, back to you, Miriam, in that I would like to know how you are reaching out. Obviously, no one sits in a company and waits for the phone to ring. Well, maybe some people do. I don't, or didn't when I was working. But what steps are you taking here? Obviously, you just mentioned you were at the show, last week, or was it in Florida or whatever? This is something that you're probably doing a lot of. What else? Cold calls? No, hopefully not. How are you reaching out? I'm very curious. I mean, no secrets, but just a general idea of your day, let's say. I'd love to hear that.
Great question, actually. We're doing a lot of different things. I think it's one diving in and understanding kind of these separate components within communications. So we're doing anything from jumping into Google Analytics and getting more advertising out there. I'm trying to build a lot of relationships within publicity and media, just to kind of get an understanding of who they touch and talk to. We really want to dive in more to the events, but it's a breadth of them. So you have your ClueCon, where you're focused on the developer portion and the open core. Enterprise Connect was kind of more targeted toward our bundled platforms that could scale. But now we want to also kind of jump into smaller things just to kind of see where individuals are hiding and what they're looking for. But yeah, I think it's an approach of a variety of things. And I think we're also bringing in a really awesome sales lead pretty soon that kind of deals within the market of the BroadSoft world. So that'll help us understand, because one thing that I'm learning as I go to these events and I'm talking to all these amazing people is it's very relationship driven. And it's very much people talk to people. They trust who they know. We can spend all day trying to make phone calls to companies and see if we get the right person. But I think it's really diving into who are these key players in the industry, these folks that not only love what they do, but they have 20, 30 years experience and really understand the framework, and just expanding on those. So.
Absolutely. I think the last piece that, Miriam and her team has really done a great job at is our partnerships. They've gone with companies that, have been partnering with us for a while and said, hey, look, you guys have a customer base and we have a different customer base. Why don't you let us know about your customer base and vice versa, and let your customer base know about us, and we'll do the same. And a lot of especially our upstream providers, they love it because they're trying to get more people onto their platform. And for us, it's a lot of them are looking for a Class 5 or a Class 4 switch. So then they're asking their upstream providers, who do they use? And they mentioned us. So this cross marketing has been a big success for us.
What is your, I don't know how to say this. I'm not a business person, but your European profile, I guess is the best way to say this. We know that there's a lot of US stuff that comes over to Europe, even though there's a lot of challenges with regard, especially telco and telecommunications. Give you the most obvious example is Google Voice. In that the trouble that they had, I'm sure they underestimated the problems they were going to have, and they actually did expect at some time to have at least UK numbers and work out into the world. Or another thing is Google Fiber, by the way, in the United States, they were already pretty much stopped on that initiative. But as far as 2600 goes, what are you doing in Europe? And basically, I'm trying to say, are you sending Miriam to Berlin in May?
I would love to send her away for many reasons.
Wait a minute.
Because she's fantastic at conferences. You know, obviously we hate to see her out of the office and stuff, but I would love to see her. You know, so Camellia World. So Camellia is part of our stack, and Daniel over there has been amazing. He's been, you know, a true champion for us, and we have for him. In fact, we've been begging him to come talk at our conference, but unfortunately it's about 2 weeks earlier than his conference. And so I understand why he might be a little bit busy during that time. But yeah, you know, if you can convince Miriam to speak on stage at Camellia World, I will definitely send her there. But in the meantime, it's actually funny. You know, we are planning to sponsor Camellia World just because they do have such an amazing platform. And it's one of those things where we want to use, you know, we want to make sure the world knows that Camellia and FreeSwitch and even Big Couch and a lot of these open source components were the reason why we could have built our stack so quickly versus having to build everything individually and stuff. And that's kind of the open source world, is that, you know, you try to use each other to get to the next step and compete with the big guys, just because that's kind of the key there.
But the people who are at Camellia World, not everybody. I mean, there's some small developers, independents. There's people like me who have absolutely nothing in the business at all. I'm just there to basically party, I suppose, is the best way to explain that. James and so on. But then there's also there's 1&1, which is a huge, I think, operator. The SIPGate is there, I believe. James, who are some of the really bigger people who come?
SIPWise, the Austrians are also quite big. But a whole raft of different people. And the more I think about it, Miriam, you're going to have to come over. And not only are you going to talk, you're going to do live demonstrations, you know.
Oh, dangerous demos.
Start practicing now then.
There are things that can be done, though, at a distance. You know, Patrick, the enemy isn't the distance, it's the time difference, really.
Oh, agreed. 100%.
Because Miriam could do almost everything she does as long as it's not in person from Berlin. It's not that long either. But the point is, we believe that most of us have gone for at least 3-4 years to Berlin to Camellia World. And we believe very strongly that the contacts you make there in person are well worth the trip and the time. There's a lot of amazing people there. There's a lot of nice people that maybe can't do you any good today, but may have some key place for you another time, you know? So I can't, I'll stop now, but I can't stop saying good things about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, what we've learned over the years is that a lot of our biggest sales leads have not come from, you know, they heard about us one way or the other from, you know, marketing campaign at this point. A lot of it's because of the relationships we made 7 years ago or 6 years ago at a conference they heard about us. And one of the big advantages we have is that we have been around for almost a decade now. And people know that we're not just going to be going away tomorrow. So they look at that as, you know, hey, your platform's stable, but your company is stable also. And that was one of the hardest parts when you're first starting off a year into it. You know, people are like, well, your platform architecture looks amazing, but how do I know that you guys aren't going to go out of business in 6 months from now? And if we're going to build our entire company based on your platform, that's a really scary proposition. And so, you know, it was hard to get customers early on, you know, just because of the length of time that we've been in business. But again, because of these relationships we made at, you know, places like Camellia, places like KazooCon and stuff, they heard about us. And then when their customers needed it, or down the road when they switched to a different position at a different company, they would mention us saying, hey, we heard, 22nd Hertz talk 2 years ago at KazooCon, and they're fantastic. We should check them out and stuff. So I 100% agree. And like I said, if you guys can get Miriam on stage to do a dangerous demo, then I'm 100%. I will put my credit card right now to buy her flight.
Well, I think I can guarantee that, Miriam, you're doing it.
Okay, I'm in.
All right, we'll make that happen. And yeah, I agree with entirely with what you said, Patrick. That's a tough nut to crack. He's starting out with something great, and everybody goes, "Yeah, great," but what are we going to do, basing our whole operation on you, and then you're gone 2 years from now, or worse, Amazon bought you, something like that.
Yeah, there's another aspect to it as well, which is the way that the 2600 hertz product has evolved over the years. I mean, looking at the product today, it looks nothing like it was, 6-7 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's funny. Our first vision, and it's kind of silly to say it now, but our vision was to build the underlying building blocks for people so that, hey, here's a platform and they're all API calls. So you can build your own JavaScript and HTML and just connect to the APIs you want. Build the experience and the interface that you want for your customers. And that was our vision. We thought everybody would want to build their own experience. Turns out no one wants to build their own experience. They just want it out of the box, hit a button, and it works. And the company really didn't take off until literally about 6 years ago when we finally decided, hey, look, people don't get the underlying platform. So we'll make a interface so they can just play with it. It's just a demo interface. And it was drag and drop. And people were like, wow, drag and drop, this is, unheard of in telecom. Like, no one really does drag and drop. And when they started to play around with it, next thing you know, we saw a massive spike in, user adoption because there was an actual interface. And so it's funny, now that we learned that people don't want just like a piece of it. They want a fully functional, graphical user interface, a fully functional experience that they can start using immediately. And then they'll build on top of that. But if you don't have the base level, user interface, it's going to be really hard for them to get started and stuff. And I think it's funny, you mentioned our product has changed a lot over the last 5 or 6 years. I couldn't agree more. Some of the engineers we hire aren't telco engineers. They're literally front-end engineers. We spend a lot of time on product, which is, not just does the product need to do, but the UX and the experience the customer should be going through when they turn on each app and stuff. And I also think that's kind of helped us a lot because people can get started much easier now because they just hit a couple buttons, they start it, and they're like, oh, wow, I just drag and drop this, and now I can make this call flow. Wow, this is really simple and stuff.
Yeah, that's worth emphasizing that one thing that really makes the Kazoo 2600 hertz stuff stand out is the UI UX. It is wonderfully different.
Oh, absolutely. And the great thing is we still have the ability to build your own experience on top of it too. But we, as I said before, people did not get it when we had no GUI. People, when they had to go to command line to set up like their databases, are like, I have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. I see that it's a distributed system somehow, but I don't know what this really means, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden we're like, okay, well, here's a pretty picture. And they're like, oh, I get it now. And we're like, okay, wow. So it's true. Pictures really do, say 1,000 words and stuff. So
Patrick,
yeah, sorry, I can see a dangerous demo coming together now, and where Miriam makes everybody go GUI.
Oh, nice.
Patrick, what would be your most difficult challenge that you're seeing in the next period?
Well, that's a good question. It's funny.
I think so.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, it's interesting because we've always kind of looked at this industry from an outside point of view, and then we always try to ignore we like to know what our competition is doing, but we don't focus on what we do based on what our competition is doing. Because all we can do is go as fast as possible and build the best product as possible. But lately, what we've been seeing, especially, and I just came back from Cloud Communications over in London last week, and one of the things we noticed in the common theme there was consolidation in this industry, is that all the big players are trying to consolidate to get market share and stuff. And it's been really unique because, some of our customers are now consolidating with other customers. And it's great for us because they're still on our same platform. But, we're starting to notice that like a lot of our big customers are trying to buy a lot of our smaller customers. It's good and bad. It's good that, the platform has gone to the point where, the big customers are, consolidating and trying to grow market share. It's a little scary on some points that, you don't want all your customers to be one person anymore. Also, you know, that gets a little scary because then they have a lot of leverage and stuff. But, you know, kind of where, you know, I think our biggest pain point right now, I wouldn't say a pain point. Our biggest challenge still is trying to, you know, get the word out there, because our complete platform is all white labeled. And so a lot of our bigger customers, they don't want to mention that they're using us because they want the industry to believe that they've built everything from the ground up and stuff. However, with that said, some of the bigger ones are now starting to, you know, kind of come out of the woodwork and say, hey, look, you know, we can start doing some cross marketing because we want your other customers to know who we are in case they want to be, you know, to sell to us or X, Y, and Z and stuff. So it's kind of it's an interesting industry because of the consolidation. But, you know, like I said, our biggest challenge has always been the same thing, which is how do we get more people to know who we are, and how do we get to know more people to know that, you know, multi-billion-dollar companies are using our platform for their cloud solution. So
I guess I should ask Miriam the same question. Your biggest challenge?
Oh, I mean, I think like Patrick said, it's for me coming in, I came from marketing roles where it was very much, there was a lot of co-marketing, there was a lot of partnerships, and that was your strength. And coming into this, it's like, well, people don't really want to talk about us. So it's like, okay, you're kind of starting from the ground up. And even though, you know, everyone's using your system and this platform is incredible, you can really only focus on the platform. And then when people start asking, well, tell us who uses you or give us some use cases, we're kind of hindered with that sense. So now it's, I think, building the relationships outside of our customer base to really show them what we're capable of. But yeah, I would say that's been my biggest challenge coming in is, I mean, your partnerships are so huge and we have kind of moved forward and we are dealing or working with several really awesome partners, but to not be able to talk about or have other people talk about us and kind of share their experiences and how we've helped them grow, that's my biggest wall, really.
Absolutely. Well, and I think the marketing team has done a great job because already we do have some of our larger customers. They're for the first time ever saying, hey, you know, we want to sponsor KazooCon. And we want our name out there. And in the past, they would give us money for KazooCon, but they're like, do not mention that we gave you money. And it was almost like this weird, like they're like slipping money underneath the table and they're like, hey, shh, don't tell anybody where this came from, but we will sponsor KazooCon, just don't mention our names. And we're like, okay, that's free marketing for you guys. But they're like, you know, again, we don't want our competition knowing who we use because we're scared that they might try to use you guys too. And, you know, now I think they're now embracing the open source community and they're saying, hey, look, it's okay for people to know that we're using open source because we want other companies or other developers to start building on top of our platform. And if they know that we're using the same platform, it's going to be a much easier conversation. So I think the world's changing slightly in that direction, which is good.
I think it's probably time to get into what KazooCon is, who it's for. This is going to be kind of a brief announcement. We'll remind people once in a while what's going on. This is San Diego, April 30th to May 2nd. In fact, we're going to, as soon as somebody explains what this is about and who it's for, we're going to give away a couple of tickets, right, Miriam? So go ahead, either one of you or both of you. Maybe you could do it in unison. I don't know. No, tell us about KazooCon.
It actually makes me really sad that we didn't practice this over and over again, that we could actually just say, okay, you know, hit a little button, some music goes on, and we just sing it.
That would be funny.
That would be amazing. So KazooCon, it's been evolving for the last 6 years or 7 years. I guess, just kidding. I see it on the screen. It says the 5th annual, so 5 years. It's really for a breadth of different people. We have developers that build on top of the Kazoo. We have a lot of small, you know, to mid-sized range companies that come there because they're using Kazoo to power them for all their, you know, telco services. And then we have a lot of big companies that, you know, will be there. And we've had people like Google and Apple in the past come to KazooCon because a lot of times, you know, they're trying to keep a finger on the pulse. And we have a lot of really large companies that have been using us. And like I mentioned, they don't really mention that they use us, but they come to KazooCon. And some of our sponsors, you know, they come there and then they walk away and, you know, they're like, oh, wow, you know, Meraki is now using our software because we met them at KazooCon. And so it is kind of a wide variety of people that will show up. And in fact, we got to the point where we have business people and developers all showing up. And so And during the morning, we'll have morning sessions for everybody. And then we actually split up the sessions in the evening for developers on one side. And then there's another room for the business people. And so the business tracks are talking about how do you scale your business? How do you grow more people? What's the best way to bring in more leads and stuff? The developer tracks are more around, hey, here's different APIs you might not have known. Here's how WebRTC works. Here's things around webhooks and WebSockets for all real-time eventing. How do we make sure that you know all the real power underneath the hood? Because even though we do have a interface, a lot of the APIs are not exposed because we have to build out the APIs first, and then we build the interface on top second. So, this is a good way for developers to get there early to hear a lot of the early stuff that's still in alpha that hasn't been publicly released, so they can get some pretty cool insight on where the company's going and where the roadmap's going. Like that?
Yeah, I feel like you did a good job covering it. I also, when I first came in, it was just a few weeks before our last event. And it was the first time we'd really separated kind of the technical from the business. And it was still kind of feeling it out and learning. And I don't think the messaging was quite as strong as it could have been. Where this year, we're actually taking our customers through the journey of this is how you can optimize how you use our platform. And then also tying in a lot of our new advancements that we're going to be releasing on site, or at least coming close to, and really showing them what are the business benefits of how you use us and how do you optimize on these. And so I think it'll be, the dev side, the technical side has always been really strong because it's really like how do you integrate and kind of deep diving into the API usage and kind of the breadth of the capability those have. Where now we're kind of going to focus as much on the business side. And find ways so everybody can engage. So there's a message that everyone can relate to versus kind of you go and you're like, okay, what's happening? But yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And the last piece about KazooCon is we are literally on the beach. So at nighttime, we'll have some luau's and things like that. And nothing says, fun parties than an after party where you literally see the water right in front of you. It's warm outside. It's not chili, and you're having a cocktail with all your fellow Kazooites. I don't know if that's a term yet, but that's what, throwing that out there. And it's going to be a great experience from start to finish. And that's the other thing that the business people have learned is that a lot of the networking is where a lot of value comes to them because they meet amazing contacts in the field. And if they're trying to expand to different countries, they'll meet people who are using Kazoo in different countries. They'll meet people who provide phone services or DIDs in different countries. And even, I saw that Voxbone was one of your sponsors. They've come to many of our past KazooCons and, they come back saying, wow, we didn't know these guys were using you guys. This is fantastic. Now we have a new customer because of this. So it's a great networking event. It's a great place to learn. And it should be a lot of fun.
Okay, and I'm putting up a sign here to tell people that if they tweet, actually you could probably, if you're not on Twitter, you could probably email or find a way to be one of the first, how many should we say, 5? Is that too risque?
Let's do 5, yeah.
5 tickets for the event, and there's plenty of time to plan and try to get there. So if you're anywhere near San Diego, this would be a no-brainer. Do it. Just tweet to 2600 Hertz, 2600 HERTZ or HEIZZ, and on Twitter, or contact them in any way. And you must mention that you saw them on what? Visions Under Construction. So that would be the way to go. I think I've shown that long enough. Let me go back to, there's a cursor problem here. So I have to keep commenting in order to concentrate, and I'm back. Okay.
Perfect.
That was pretty good execution, actually. If you saw the way this is set up here in the desk, you'd see, bravo, Oscars. Other things that we haven't mentioned, and also I'm calling out to people because nobody said anything in IRC, but sometimes there are questions, and Corrado's with us, and he knows about all this stuff. I'm still unclear on the breakdown. I was on the site earlier. Let me go pull that up. I can't show it to everybody at once, but I'll just go to, that would be actually, I'm talking about the 2600 Hertz site, which I have to find. There we go. And that would be 2600hz.com. So under products, we have I'm going to read what I'm seeing here, which is hosted platform, private cloud, global infrastructure, and 2600 hertz mobile, which was, I think, the subject that Darren covered last time, possibly. Is there a way to demystify this just slightly so that people will want to go to 2600hertz.com to see more?
Oh, would you like to say, or would you like me to?
I can start it.
Four groups, right? You've got four categories there. Go ahead.
We do. So I think hosted platform is going to be one of our strongest platforms, or what we've been kind of running the most successful on. And that's pretty much, we host everything for you. You're on a shared cluster with other servers. Typically kind of smaller resellers utilize this option. It's very kind of out of the box. You can customize a little, but majority of the time they just want to be able to take this platform, plug it in, get it up and going, and kind of let it be.
And that's in the U.S. market for the most part, and we're expanding out to the U.K. market next, in Australia.
All right. And then private cloud is similar. However, you are running on your own server. So you're not sharing a cluster with anyone else. You have your own dedicated hardware you're working with. You still have kind of that bundled approach. There's a little bit of customization you can put out in it, but it's more so, I don't want to do too much with it, but I don't want to share my network with anybody else.
And so just to remind everybody that the private cloud is it's our data centers and our servers, but you get your own dedicated instance. So it's almost kind of the Rackspace or Amazon AWS feel, where you come here, you say, I want a shared hosted environment, it's a little bit cheaper, or I want my own dedicated servers so I can do more customization. It's a little more expensive. And then finally, global.
And then global infrastructure. That's pretty much, we just want to use your basic foundation and your apps, but we want the ability to customize how we want and when we want. Obviously, that's going to be a little bit more pricey as you're dealing with kind of personalized customizations. But kind of the world is your oyster. You really have benefit of not only utilizing our technology, but also expanding on it and making it your own.
Yep. So for global infrastructure, that's more for people who are outside the United States. They have their own data center. We install the software for you. We help you monitor. We help you maintain it. We have a 24-hour NOC support team to always make sure that it's up and running. But you own everything from nuts and bolts. You own the hardware. You own the data centers. You own the MPLS connections. And a lot of the bigger companies, if they have HIPAA compliant issues or anything like that, they need to have everything in their data centers.
Okay, and now the most exciting bit.
No, if I can make a question about, Patrick, you coming to the UK. In May, we will be subjected to the General Data Protection Regulations, GDPR. And that might be a little bit of a problem with data centers that are not residing in the EU and all the faff that is around. So your hosted platform will be available to the UK. Are you ready? Is the platform ready for GDPR?
Yeah, so we've actually been focusing on that for a while now. And a lot of it has to go with data security, and a lot has to go with if you have a customer and their all their data for that customer, especially in Germany, where if you need to remove that customer, you have 30 days to remove every instance of that data. The system has always been designed that way. In fact, we were joking here, it's always been almost to a fault where if someone tells us they don't want their data here, we delete it. And if they come back actually, we're just kidding, our response is unfortunately, the system is not designed for people who are just kidding. Once you delete that data, it's gone. And so it's funny from a security standpoint. I feel like accidentally we went in the right direction for what people need, especially in the European market. But you're right. There's still always things to keep an eye out, and on the product roadmap, we're always adding more and more security features for data protection.
Same, because I'm in that sector with a number of clients we have. PCI DSS compliance, recording of conversations, and muting of sensitive data like credit cards, and MFID2, and everything that is around the banking and that industry. Is your platform compliant?
Correct. Well, I'd say it's 95% compliant. The last pieces, it's the credit card piece is we're actually building that out in the call center function. So when you call into the call center, as soon as you're ready to give your credit card, there's a quick little button that they hit the button. It stops recording that piece until your credit card information is done, and then they start recording that piece. Luckily, it's just a simple API call, so it's fairly easy to make. But that's, I think that's in alpha now, and that should be ready by the time we launch out in Europe.
Okay, by the time you launch, and when would that be? I'm not holding you onto that, but please.
Corrado, I believe you should come to KazooCon, and you'll learn everything about the day we launch.
Okay. I hope I can. As you can understand, I'm quite busy.
Yeah, I totally understand. Let's just say it's going to be very soon after KazooCon. And I definitely don't want to give away too many of the fun surprises at KazooCon. But there will be some exciting announcements on how it's easier for clients to expand worldwide, and there will be some exciting announcements on how, if you have a client who has multiple locations worldwide, how you can kind of support them all under, one system.
All right. So a distributed system.
Correct.
Fantastic. Michael, do you have any questions?
I have very few questions, in point of fact. Although I'd like to know how, last time, going back in time, last time we did the mobile thing, which was kind of interesting. How did that fare? How's mobile a part
yeah,
of
that's
this?
that's the bit I'm champing at the bit, waiting to get into.
Yeah.
Every time we try and get there, something happens, like somebody phones me in the background.
Or we're out of time. But yeah, the integration of mobile. Will you have a mobile platform or an MVNO here? Who will be your provider for numbers and so on? Questions.
So we are still in the talks with a couple of European providers to add the same type of functionality out in Europe, which is exciting. Which is a little less exciting. It's the 2600 hertz mobile. We have probably a handful of clients that are using it and expanding pretty quickly. But I think the harder part is we have to reevaluate how the onboarding process is for our resellers and our partners, because when you're selling a mobile device, there's a lot more complexity than just selling a SIP handset. And so one of the things that we didn't realize was people are so used to bringing their own phones, their own cell phones to their corporations that, a lot of times corporations have just kind of stopped offering those devices. But where we are making an impact in the market is some of the larger corporations who do still provide cell phones. They love this offering because this is a full functional, business communication system now that is at the palm of your hands without having to add an app. And it, does the extension calls. You can call record. You can set everything to your CRM from your cell phone, again, by using the native dialer. So a lot of the bigger corporations love it because it tightly integrates with their current business phone system. A lot of the smaller guys are still trying to figure out the marketing on how to sell it to the SMBs of the world and stuff.
It is complicated. BYOD was a trend that came before that kind of goes in the other direction in many respects, right?
I agree. Yeah, and that's what I was saying. Like the enterprises, they still it's funny. A lot of my friends still walk around with two cell phone devices. One's their business, one's their personal. But I'm seeing it less and less. But the companies are still offering their own phones. They love this offering because, again, it gives them more control, and it also can do a lot of like data protection, which is exciting. So is it a massive success how we thought it would be? No. We're not ruling the world on the mobile side yet. However, it's starting to get, some traction, and a lot of, like I said before, our larger clients, they're starting to figure out the ways to sell this to the corporations.
Yeah, and I think the reason for that is it's a whole order of magnitude more complex. Mm-hmm. And one of the challenges for you is that you have to work with a mobile network operator in order to make the mobile components work.
Yeah.
And that's always tricky.
Well, and that's what it's funny. When we first came out with this concept, it was at our very first KazooCon that we announced it, and that was 6 years ago.
I remember that well. And,
yeah.
And how have things evolved since then? Because then it was all a Sprint based on the Sprint mobile network, wasn't it? Have you evolved past that now, or is it still Sprint-centric?
Yeah, so the hard part was not. So let's take a step back. When we announced it, we got really excited because we actually worked with Sprint. They were fantastic, and they got us up and running. And that was kind of the crawl. And then the walk was, okay, how do we make sure that, people don't hurt themselves with data overage, usage or whatever. And then we started to realize when you start peeling back the onion, mobile is not just like a simple, like, hey, can you connect it to your network? It's how do you provision the phone? How do you make sure that they have, ways to limit the amount of data people are using? How do you make sure that they can throttle it? How do you make sure that, if there's any kind of security issues, they can, fix it remotely? How do they make sure that, you get the right phones on the network and you're not buying some, Verizon phone that doesn't work on your Sprint network and stuff? And it's the little details, I think our eyes were a lot bigger than our stomachs, as they say, back in, 2013, 2014, when we first announced it. And so we spent a ton of time working on all those details. And now the system, if you actually go into the interface, it's a great experience. You can literally just take a SIM card, pop it in your phone, and you type in the ESN number of the phone, and then the phone is up and registered. And you quickly can say, this is where I want to throttle it. In fact, we've gotten compliments from other major carriers. They're like, hey, look, this interface is fantastic. We want to take your interface and start selling your interface to our customers because it's way better than what we have. And that's not just Sprint, that's major carriers around the world. Because a lot of those major carriers, they rely on people walking into your Verizon office or your AT&T office to get your phone up and running. With our interface, it's kind of drag and drop and simplicity, and that's why anybody can actually set their own phone up. And so it's funny, we've nailed the experience, but you're right. I think if this came out 10 years ago, it would have blown up because people weren't used to bringing their own cell phones to their office and stuff. Now we're trying to figure out where the actual market fit is, which is a little more challenging, but I think we're starting to make some big progress, especially in the last 6 months and stuff.
Well, I look forward to seeing the mobile bits in Berlin, Miriam.
Oh yeah, I would love
and see how they fare outside of United States of Sprint.
Absolutely.
There's a major shift in mobile phones besides Chinese handsets that usually have dual SIM. I just purchased for a client a Motorola Lenovo G5 and G5 Plus, in fact, and that has a dual SIM set up. So it's quite easy to add a second SIM, one for work and one personal.
Yep.
So the fact that there are so many new handsets that are now coming as default with dual SIM will probably alleviate a bit of the problems you might have. So you can get your own SIM, pop it in from 2000 to 2600 hertz, and it will run.
Absolutely. Well, and that's kind of the shining light in this whole project is that now that you can have multiple SIMs, and now you can actually, in some SIM cards, you can put multiple providers on the same SIM card. It's going to make it a lot more interesting. And if we can, start partnering with some of the European companies, like when I travel to London, I literally have to get a new SIM card every time I go out there, pop it in my phone to start getting service. And if we can put multiple SIM cards in there and it's just a one ubiquitous experience, it's going to be, just amazing for the end user. And I think that's what's going to drive a lot of this change.
Yeah, well, and I know James is on that exactly.
I think we can introduce you to the latest multi-IMSI, multi-crypto KV technology in SIM cards. In fact, Patrick, if you or Darren come over to Berlin, we'll make sure that you leave with a few in your pocket.
Perfect.
Or you could meet at KazooCon, right?
Yeah.
Or alternate. There's KazooCon, yeah.
That makes sense. I just want to interject a small comment here from somebody who's more a user, closer to users, let's say, than everybody here, which is that the idea of having two phones. I mean, I have about four, but it's not because they're just old phones that I use for other things. But my point is that sometimes when you have two phones, you might have certain kinds of photos on one phone and contacts and stuff. So
Only two.
SIM is not the entire answer. I mean, it's great for what you were saying, but the SIM is not the entire separation. The other separation is things like contacts, photos. There are many other reasons why somebody would have two phones. Now, I cannot imagine walking around with or traveling with two phones, but many people do apparently.
Yeah.
And also, there's this problem of the searchability of phones. I mean, we're not going to get into this now, but the mobile world brings a whole other thing into it, which is the insecurity of data, in that it's much more likely that you will lose or have a phone stolen than your home computer or even your laptop, although laptops are stealable too. So these are little things that need to be thought about as well. And, yeah.
And it's interesting. One of the things we've been looking at and doing a lot of testing in our R&D labs is the idea that right now all the voice goes through a switch. And that's how 2600 hertz mobile goes. It goes to your cell tower, or from your cell phone to the cell tower to the central office. And then there's a SIP handoff through our switch. One of the ideas we've been playing around with is, what if we send all the data through our switch too? And so your exact message, which is, hey, what happens if my phone gets stolen? Well, all the data is going through the switch, and so we can either stop it or we can make sure that the corporations know that piece of information. And I'm not saying we should or shouldn't, but we want to give the options to the end users. And the other cool thing that we can do now too is, because we can overlay multiple phone numbers on a cell phone, you can have your personal phone and your business phone all on the same cell phone. And then you can do call-based routing so that at certain times it's only your business calls, but then after 6 o'clock, you want to be with your family or, on the beach somewhere. You don't want calls coming to you. And so the system will actually determine what time it is and stop sending your business calls to your personal cell phone. And then you can also make it where, every time a business call comes in, you mark that as a business call, and then it'll recognize that. So every time you make a call out, it'll change the caller ID based on who you're calling and stuff. So there's a lot of cool technology based around this idea. And I think step one was get it working. Step two was get it easy to manage. And I think step three, and kind of like the running part, is how do we give more data encryption to these companies? How do we make sure we give them more security and safety nets? And how do we make it a good user experience so that the end user has an option to make a personal call that's not recorded, that's not going through any of their business firewall, or a personal call or a business call that is going through their switch that can be recorded, can be sent off to the CRM, can be, all that information is extremely valuable, and people aren't gathering that information when they're making calls on their current cell phones.
I have a final question, and I want to make sure that we've covered everything that anyone, you guys, but also anybody else who's listening, anything that they want to know. And my question to you is with regarding support. So your customers, I think, are in a specific category where they're going to need to, what are the support channels, first of all, and then I'll ask my question, because that isn't my question.
Yeah.
What are they, though?
Sorry, Miriam, I feel like I'm speaking way too much.
It was fine. Well, we have paid support. So we do have a support team, and it's going to be based on kind of your service plan and what you offer. We also kicked off our community. I believe we did that in May of last year. It's not quite at 100% of what we want it to be, but ideally we want to build that out. So that would be kind of the initial place. If you have kind of your general support needs, you can go and reference without having to talk to a live person. Now, if you're getting into the nitty-gritty details or you have a more customized solution, then you can utilize our support channels for that. But we want to make it a little less to the direction of I have to call somebody and sit and talk to them, but they can go get the basics online, and then anything in more detail they would grab.
Absolutely. I think our long-term vision is, when we first started this company, we made our money through consulting. We took that money from consulting and just hired more engineers to develop the platform. And then once the platform, finally got stable enough that we can start selling it, we mainly just sold support services on top of the platform. I think we're now at the third evolution of the company where, we have an open source base. It's always going to be open source, and there's a lot of open source apps that's on top of it. But now there's like paid apps that people can buy, like call center or monitoring tools and things like that. that they will pay for these things just because, they're willing to pay because they're trying to scale the system. And I think our long-term vision is, if I sold zero support going forward, I'd be happy, because that's actually a lot of, that's a lot of man and woman power trying to get, support people up on the phones throughout the night. And so we're using the community as a really easy way for people to get free support. And every time they ask a support ticket to us, if it's a common question, we'll put it back in the community, or we'll ask them to ask it in the community, and then we'll answer in the community. Because again, our whole goal is to try to get people away from asking us support questions. And so we can really focus on developing new applications and APIs that, will be much more valuable for them in the long run.
Great. My comment is based on some experience I've had recently, a couple of things. One was asking for support, and it's a sort of a community / monitored thing of a company, very expensive software. And basically the answers were always, well, if you upgraded for $350 to the newer version, that, that's one thing. And my question specifically is, Michael, was that you? No, somebody, I thought I heard somebody say something. My specific question has to do with how you monitor that, because in my opinion, apparently nobody's ever listening to this opinion, in the experiences I've had recently with a couple of companies, my opinion is that as part of your company operation, you really should be looking at how well the support is doing. Maybe you don't want to make secret calls, or, I don't know how the best way to do this without offending anybody or doing anything underhanded, but you really need to know that the support is earnest. And I'm going to tell you why in just a short sentence.
Yep.
I recently had an experience that was so good that I feel like tweeting every day about this company. I've only done it once so far because you can't do that. But the point is, once you win somebody over with fantastic support, there's nothing better. There's nothing better you can do. So hopefully you folks are into that. And if anyone else is in the distance of hearing my voice, find out if your support's any good, because there's nothing worse than bad support. Nothing.
Oh, 100% agree with you. In fact, I would say the reason this company has, survived the rocky roads was because our support was so good. In the sense that, when someone has an issue, they need it. So, it's not like, hey, I'm going to send this ticket in and talk to me in 3 days and stuff. And our vision was always the same, which is, if you give this good experience, if you have an issue and you help them fix it quickly, they'll still stick around. If they have an issue and you take forever, or they feel like you're ignoring them, they're going to go away and find something else. And, it's telecom. There's a lot of options for everybody. So, we really value our customers because, we don't have a large sales or marketing team. So it's hard for us to go find 10 customers for every time we lose one. So, our vision was always, what can we do? Well, all our engineers are on the support line. The way the hierarchy works is that if there's ever a major outage, all our engineers get woken up. We also have a 24-hour NOC support team to make sure that, they're watching people's systems throughout the world. But one of the things that we have done, which, we don't do everything right, but one of the things we have done right is, we send out surveys based on, how do you like the platform? How do you like the applications? How do you like the experience? How do you like the support? And the number one ranking thing we get every time is support is our, they're like gold standard support, and people said, hey, look, we had an issue. Everybody's had issues with every platform. That's just software. But because your support was so good, we're not going to leave you guys, because it's always, the top of the, top of the game and stuff. And recently we heard one of our competitors literally have 2 support people for their entire organization, which kind of blew my mind, because I was like, that's crazy. And, we've gotten a lot of their customers because of that. And they said, hey, look, your software is good, but if you have an outage or you have any kind of issue, you're going to be pretty much stuck with the bag, holding the bag, and your customers will leave because your system is down. And so since they only had 2 support people, a lot of times there's hours of the day they'd be like, oh, no one's working support lines for another 6 hours, so we'll get back to you once we work. And they're like, that's just unacceptable and stuff. So, and, so I 100% agree with you.
I just had a different company emailed a question. It took 3 weeks, simple question. It took 3 weeks to answer. It was an ordering question. And I went on their forum, their community thing, and saw several people going, seriously, 3 weeks before I even had a chance to post and complain. apparently they just don't believe in support. Anyway, I've wasted enough time on that, but this is an important issue, and hopefully anybody who's doing anything needs to work on that. Have I forgotten anything? I'm watching IRC. We've got Corrado. We got Michael still here. Anybody else want to say anything? I could even pull up Twitter. Heck, why not? I don't like to look at 16 different screens at once, though. But anybody? Or alternatively, folks from 2600, have we forgotten anything? Contact information. Where should people go? To your main website, KazooCon.com for KazooCon, which is happening end of April, beginning of May.
Yeah, April 30th.
What else?
You want to learn more about the product, you go to our main site, 2600hertz.com. You can actually dive into our community from our main page as well, just to kind of check it out and see what's coming through.
Yeah, or just send us an email at contact@2600hertz.com or sales@2600hertz.com, and we'd love to hear from you.
That's great. We've had a really good audience today too, folks. So I'm glad you promoted it, and that's fantastic. Miriam, I'm hoping we're going to meet you in Berlin in May. Patrick, it was great to meet you. Thank you, and hopefully both of you will be back soon.
Absolutely. You guys, we really appreciate it. And and I can't wait to hear about Miriam's dangerous demo in Germany. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's going to be a great time. Will be had by all. And I'm going to switch over and do a very funny thing here, which is to close off with this and this. Thank you, everybody.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.